But first, let's get back to Micah Parsons and the Dallas Cowboys, who slipped past the Seahawks 41-35 in a track meet. Seattle, I'm not a coach, not an expert on offensive line play, but I'm just not sure losing track of a defensive player of the year candidate on a game deciding 4th down is the right strategy. But that's what happened. 4th and 2, last gas drive. The Seahawks need 7. Micah Parsons off the right side. Looked like Seattle's offensive line slid left toward the pressure. Problem is, one of the best pass rushers in the game is out wide. Running back couldn't get to him. Geno Smith throws the ball away. And Micah Parsons, in my opinion, bails out a really strange decision by Cowboys head coach Mike McCarthy just moments before. That's where I want to focus first. There's so much to talk about in such a fun game, but let's take it back to the possession before. Cowboys are clinging to a 38-35 lead. They come back from a halftime deficit. They force a turnover on downs, and that looked like the penultimate moment. They get the ball back with little time on the clock. It looks like they're going to grind this thing out. They kill off Seattle's timeouts by running the ball. They get all the way down to a 3rd and 3 at the Seattle 14-yard line. Minute and 52 to play. So you're under the 2-minute warning. 3rd down, no Seattle timeouts. And look, I'm team aggression all the way. I want you to go for it on 4th down. I want you to go for the kill. I hate when coaches get conservative, but with Seattle holding no timeout, a run takes the clock down to roughly a minute left. You could potentially pick up the first running the ball. Tony Pollard had a decent enough night. If you pick it up, you win. If you come close, maybe you have a fun little conversation on the sideline about going for it. Pick it up, you win. It's worth the risk, in my opinion, all the way down on the 12, 13-yard line. And even if you get stuffed, you run the clock down to a minute and you kick, you take a 6-point lead, you give Seattle 60 seconds to drive the whole field. Not McCarthy's call. He opts for a go ball to CeeDee Lamb. Favorable look. It's one-on-one coverage. And I can understand if you watch this game, you know all about these flag-happy refs. They threw 19 flags for 257 penalty yards. Maybe they were hoping for a referee call that essentially wins the game, but it felt like a low percentage play to me. And when it fell incomplete, stopped the clock. It gave Seattle all the time they needed to potentially drive the ball for the game-winning points. I think it's a puzzling decision, but it looks a hell of a lot better in retrospect when you know you have Micah Parsons. So maybe Mike McCarthy saw that coming the whole way. Who knows? Honestly, shout out to the entire Dallas defense for standing tall on what you would otherwise call a very forgettable, maybe even embarrassing night. This was just the 5th game in NFL history where we didn't see a punt by either team. First since, I believe, 2014, just up and down the field. The only thing stopping these teams were their own mistakes and occasionally penalty flags. Yes, refs, it was annoying. Seahawks racked up 406 yards and 35 points. DK Metcalf went off, looked like the guy we remember him to be. He tortured Deron Bland. Even Deron Bland gets another pick to go to 8 on the season, but DK Metcalf, 6 catches for 134 yards and 3 touchdowns. It was a rough night for the Dallas defense, but Seattle's last points of the night came 1 minute into the 4th quarter. They had the ball 3 more times in the 4th, and they were all stonewalled. 4th down stops. DeMarcus Lawrence gets a big 4th down tackle the first time, and then 2 big pressures by the Dallas pass rush force 2 incompletions. They got off the field when they needed to. What else can you say? I can't imagine Dan Quinn's going to be very happy with most of that tape, but it was a hell of an impressive rally from a unit that started the night very, very slowly. Yes, I can hear you. I think we've talked for 5-6 minutes at this point, and I haven't mentioned the biggest night of them all. That would be Dak Prescott. Now, I would argue if you've been paying attention for the last month, Dak's been playing at this level for quite a while. Essentially, since they got beat down by San Francisco, Dak Prescott has been on a heater. But to do it in a national window game, a standalone game against a 6-5 team, that was the criticism we've talked about for weeks on end. Do it against somebody with a pulse. Well, Seattle had a winning record prior to tonight. They entered week 13 in playoff position. They're a wild card team. It's a much bigger step. It ain't the end all be all. If you're not sold on the Cowboys, you don't have to be yet. But this matters more than beating Carolina at noon or the Washington Commanders on Thanksgiving. And against an opponent that was matching him step for step, Dak completed 71% of his passes, 299 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. He even threw in 24 rushing yards, looking like Mississippi State Dak, big boy in some DBs down in the red zone. Unlike a lot of Cowboys' other wins as of late, this one had to be a rally. Dak had to be nails in the second half. He spent most of the last month in a baseball hat in the second half. Through no fault of his own, he was trailing at halftime. He had a 3-yard touchdown rush just before halftime, called back by a holding flag. And like I said, his defense offered very little in the way of resistance early on. So cut to the second half. Dak gets 5 possessions. He leads the Dallas offense to points on 4 of them. And the one possession where Dallas doesn't score after halftime, they elect to go for it on a 4th and 2 from the opposing 30. They had it. The throw was to the stick. CeeDee Lamb had it. He just dropped it. That would have picked up a first down. So it's entirely possible they go 5 for 5. Undeterred, Dak goes down to lead the Cowboys to points on their next 3 drives after that. Then they get the kneel down. I do think there was a play, you put together career highlights for a quarterback. Right off the top of my head, Dak's Hail Mary to Cole Beasley against the Giants 5 or 6 years ago. He had the playoff scramble against Seattle in 2018, played the game of his life against Tampa Bay in the playoffs last year. He had a career highlight reel play in this game early in the 4th quarter. Looked like Seattle defensive end Darrell Taylor had him dead to rights. Straight up escaped from the sack, just got out of a bear hug, scrambles outside the pocket, finds Jalen Tolbert for 17 yards, only led to a field goal. Not the craziest play, but a perfect example of the determination that this guy was playing with to get a win in a big spot. Just another amazing performance in this run. Since the bye week, 20 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. They've won 5 of those 6. The one loss by whiskers, by the hair on their chinny chin chin up in Philadelphia. And guess who's up next? Next week, Cowboys-Eagles 2.0 right there at AT&T Stadium, where the Cowboys have now won 14 straight and could take on even more significance than it already has, depending on what happens this week up in Philadelphia.